Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where my dad, Coach Alex Van Houten, plus his 14 years of experience to work for you. You should listen to him. Here's Pretty Beast Mode. Who knows who we could be if we could become 1% better every single day.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 17 of Defining Dad Bod, where we'll be interviewing Dr. John Schinnerer of the Evolved Caveman podcast. Dr. John and I had a fantastic conversation that I think you'll find very powerful, that revolved around marshaling your resources and support at home to making the best of yourself. You see, there are many times that I have conversations with clients that they're gung-ho about their health and fitness changes. They're excited to begin their new exercise program, and they're excited to make some progress in some of the lifestyle factors that will help them to improve their health and fitness 1% better every single day. But then when it comes to their families, their spouses, their kids, their friends, even their moms and dads, they're met with a lot more naysaying than they are encouragement. And not only can that be discouraging, but it can actually be an obstacle to their progress. Today we get to tap into some of the knowledge and wisdom that comes from clinical psychology and Dr. John's experience working with individual clients, creating courses, and consulting for large projects that range from Pixar's movie Inside Out and a radio show on the West Coast. And regardless of whether your social support system is hugely supportive or you've got nobody in your corner, I know you'll find this conversation valuable. First, a special offer, and then some food for thought. I post a lot of workout videos from my garage gym, mostly to help motivate and inspire people, to give them an understanding of some of the exercises that work different muscle groups, and how you might be able to recreate your experience in a garage gym in the same way you might get in a normal commercial gym. And one of the pieces of equipment that I use, especially on back day, is a nifty set of handles called Angles 90. Angles 90 are those little orange dealies that allow me to get a deeper range of motion in things like a T-bar row, a pull-up, or a dynamic carry. I've been using these bad boys for about 1.5 years now, and I've really enjoyed them. So I reached out to the company to see if I could get my listeners a discount on the product, because I'd had so many people reach out and say, what the heck are those things? Angles 90 was glad to oblige. So you'll find in the link below a place where you can pick up your own pair and get 10% off for yourself, so that if you're in the garage gym setting like I am, you can use them to get a little extra range of motion out of your workout, to challenge your forearms and your biceps in a new way, and maybe you can get creative in some ways that I haven't even thought to be. And like I said, that link's in the show notes below. Thanks to Angles 90 for giving 10% off to the Defining Dad Bod listeners. I'm a big fan. I know you will be too. And now our food for thought. This week, I took on a brutal project of building our own chicken coop. It's something that I've been avoiding and I didn't want to do myself. You see, we've wanted chickens for a while. Me and the boys go through about 2 to 3 dozen eggs a week. And since we don't have any pets in the house at the moment, we thought it'd be a great experience in responsibility and in the circle of life for our kiddos. I found a great company who pre-makes great high-quality coops and gets 5-star reviews, and I ordered one on August 22nd. Well, it turns out because of COVID, there are many packaging delays, and every time I reached out, there was another delay and another delay. All the while, a good friend of ours was graciously keeping our hens so that when we did get their home, we could acclimate them to our house and start getting some great eggs. Well, long story short, our order fell through, and the thing that I had been avoiding came full circle. Either I was going to have to build this thing myself, or we were just going to have to forego the whole chicken thing altogether for now. I sat down, I searched YouTube University, and I put the time in to create a necessary parts list, to map out the steps, and I got to work. I'm not going to lie, it kicked my butt, and all while trying to build a functional chicken coop. I had my very aesthetically intelligent wife telling me that she really wanted to make sure it was a cute coop. No pressure, Alex. After a week of measuring, sawing, assembling, and running to Lowe's realizing I forgot something important, I got to stand in front of the thing. I gotta tell you, it was a good feeling. Kinda like being a kid who built a Lego house you're super excited about and showing every adult you can find so that they can ooh and awe over your creation. I told Kristen to look out because every single visitor to our house over the next couple months is probably going to get a tour of our chicken coop, whether they're interested or not, because I'm just that damn proud of it. So what's this have to do with our food for thought? This sort of pride, the pride that comes from taking on something difficult and being successful on the other side, knowing that it was good work and that it was good for you, your family, and maybe even your community, is the same kind of pride that I want my clients to be able to take in their health and fitness journeys. It's not an arrogant, haha, I eat better than you and I exercise more than you should get on my level. but it is the satisfaction that comes from building something powerful, overcoming the challenges to get there, and being able to step back and admire your own work. When was the last time you got to feel that for yourself? Is it because you haven't taken on anything difficult lately? Or is it because you haven't taken the time to recognize your own struggles for what they are and pat yourself on the back? If you're anything like most of the people that I work with, it's probably the latter. You have taken on some very difficult things in the past few months, and although you've made some mistakes, you've emerged from it successful and in a better place than when you started. Write it down, look in the mirror, tell somebody you trust about it, and celebrate that together. And if you don't have anybody in your corner, I'd love to hear about your wins. Shoot me a message at coachal@definingdadbod.com. And while you're at it, tell me my chicken coop turned out well. That'll earn you some brownie points. That's your food for thought this week. I hope it gives you something to munch on. Now, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Dr. John Schinnerer from the Evolved Caveman podcast about having powerful conversations in the relationships that can make us better. Can't wait to introduce Dr. John Schinnerer. Dr. John, how are you today, brother?
I'm great, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Now, you have a laundry list that I want to make sure people hear because this is huge. Dr. John coaches men to greater success and happiness at work and at home. Because if you don't have all four of these, you don't have any of them. And Dr. John graduated from UC Berkeley with a PhD in psychology, which I'm currently working on myself, by the way, not from UC Berkeley, but glad to have a fellow psychology nerd on the show. He was actually an expert consultant for Pixar's Inside Out, which my boys really enjoyed, by the way. And Dr. John recently received his award for Best Executive Coach in Danville for 2020 and Best Social Content in 2019. You've spoken at organizations like Stanford Medical School, UC Berkeley, Kaiser Permanente, and you have also coached executives at Kaiser, Twilio, Okta, Stanford University, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Man, you are a busy cat. His expertise ranges from high performance in the man box culture, positive psychology, anger management, and the one I'm really excited about, which is creating thriving, happy relationships. You also host a top 10 self-help podcast at the Evolved Caveman that I'd encourage everybody to check out. And you have over 10,000 people currently taking your online anger management course. You've recently recorded micro courses on anger management and forgiveness for Simple Habit, and they've been listened to over 100,000 times. It's such a pleasure to welcome you onto the show, brother, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Hey, thanks, Alex. My pleasure.
So I've got quite a few things that I want to walk through with you regarding men and as they're changing their lives through health and fitness. But one of the things that I really want to dive into before we get there is you just recently had back surgery. And from a health and fitness perspective, that's a brutal thing. Surgery of any kind is one thing, but back surgery I find sets people back more often than most surgeries. And so I wondered if you'd share with us a little bit about how that's affected you as a dad and as a man and how you're kind of bouncing back from that right now.
Sure. It's interesting because I had spinal stenosis, which is the bone within the vertebrae continued to grow and impinge nerves, which meant I was in incredible nerve pain for about 10, 11 months. And I've actually dealt with it on and off for years. And I was able to deal with that pretty well in terms of not getting irritable, staying optimistic that, I would find some way to deal with this. Because on a bad day, it was like I would get up out of bed and I would head down the stairs. I was pretty sure I could get down the stairs. When I got down the stairs, I was struck by so much nerve pain that I would look for the shortest route to the nearest place to lie down, whether it was the couch or the floor. Like that was all I could do. And, I continued to see clients. I continued to do the podcast. And then we got to surgery, which is interesting, doing surgery during COVID. But, it was a 3-hour operation and they roto-rooted 3 vertebrae. And I left the hospital the same day, which still kind of boggles my mind. The first couple of days were brutal in recovery. I've heard it's one of the top 5 most painful surgeries to recover from. And that was definitely true the first 2-3 days. And then it slowly got better. And interestingly, somewhere around that first week, I got depressed for a couple of days. And I think that the trigger was the thought, okay, now I'm feeling a little bit better. The nerve pain seems to be subsiding. And I haven't worked out for a year. And I'm 53. So it's kind of hard to do that at 53. And I had this realization like, okay, now I got to get back to work. Now I've got to start doing whatever I can. And it started with really short walks. 5-minute walks. And now I'm up to, I can walk 30 minutes to an hour. I played Frisbee with my family recently. I've been in the waves down here at the ocean recently. I'm starting to jog a little bit. I played soccer with my 14-year-old daughter recently, just, kind of kicking the ball around, juggling.
Easy. Yeah.
So I'm trying to ease back into it, but I know that I have to, not moving is not an option. When you stop moving, you start dying. Mm. So I'm encouraged because I'm 2 months out from the surgery now. I'm pain-free in terms of that nerve pain. And, you asked about how it affects you as a man too. It's interesting to me that so much of our identity as men is wrapped up in our physical body and what we're able to do or not able to do. I think part of it's wrapped up in our sexuality. And, it does affect us. It affects our mood. It affects our self-worth.
Mm. I'm sorry, brother. I think I lost you somewhere in there for a second, but I really appreciate you walking us through the feelings kind of associated with the surgery and whatnot. It looks like you're doing pretty well. You're feeling pretty good now.
I feel great.
Awesome.
Yeah. If I could get into the gym, I would at this point, but the gyms are closed here, which might be a good thing because I'd probably, go too hard and hurt myself.
Probably overdo it, right? Just hang with the body weight stuff for the moment. Get nice and eased in.
Yeah. I'm just walking. I'm going to, get on the Peloton.
You said it really well, though, the conscious baby steps toward incrementally getting back into activity. And I love your mindset around hey, if I stop moving, I start dying. So let's keep moving in a positive direction for me there. Now, with regard to your work, I always like to let my experts share their superhero origin story. And I just wondered if there are a few struggles that you wouldn't mind highlighting for me and my audience about what brought you to doing what you do right now. So what struggles have you been through that brought you to this point where you're coaching men to lead more fulfilling lives?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Because I think one of the things in life that's certain is pain and struggle. We are guaranteed that life is going to be unfair, despite the thought that we seem to all be born with that, that's not fair, or life should be fair. So I don't know how far back to go, but let's see, I got a PhD in educational psychology from UC Berkeley, started out as a school psychologist. I really wanted to help and serve. And I got disenchanted with the public school districts pretty quickly. There was some stuff going on there that I just couldn't stomach. I won't get into that. But so I left there after a couple of years, did an entrepreneurial venture with a classmate of mine from Cal, where we started doing pre-employment testing over the web for large companies like UPS. And this was back in 1998. And it worked really well for several years. And then the economy crashed and no one needed pre-employment testing anymore because everyone was holding onto their jobs out of fear. So turnover went to zero almost. And that was my first kind of lesson in cyclical and counter-cyclical businesses, which they don't teach you in psychology school.
No, they don't.
Unfortunately. And so that was kind of, I remember I had to, tell family and friends who had invested in the company that your shares are now meaningless and worthless.
Ouch.
And that kind of cast me into a depression because, as men, we get so much of our identity through what we do and our performance in the workplace. And I had to reinvent myself. So I started getting into positive psychology at that point and read about 1,000 studies. And positive psychology, for those of you who don't know, is all about the scientific study of happiness, kind of at its most basic. It's, positive emotions. Why should you care about positive emotions? What did they do for you? It's about engagement. It's about meaning. It's about purpose. And it's amazing material. And so I started writing a book because when I was a school psychologist, I had looked for the best scientifically proven tools to manage that darker side of the mind and the heart. So, anger, irritability, depression, sadness, anxiety, fear, guilt, shame, that kind of thing. And now with positive psychology, I found I had these tools to turn down the volume on the negative, tools to turn up the volume on the positive. And I thought, wow, everyone should know about this. So I compulsively wrote a book of about 600 pages and then realized, holy crap, no one's going to read 600 pages in this day and age. So I had the rough draft for a book, and I happened to go to a businessman's networking breakfast. It was a Christian businessman's networking breakfast, which is kind of a weird place for me because I consider myself spiritual, but not religious. I believe in a higher power. I kind of bristle when people tell me what to believe or how to believe. So I happened to sit next to a guy who owned a radio station. And we met a few times. He was interested in what I was doing. He said, John, I want to put you on the radio. And the idea scared the crap out of me because part of my makeup, I got a little depression in me. I got a little anxiety in me. And psychology school had never taught me how to do live radio either. Kind of all these, pushing out of the comfort zone ideas. So I was doing this live daily prime time radio show in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I had no idea what I was doing. I would compulsively write, again, like 30 pages of script a day.
Wow.
So that, I would make sure I had something to say, because I was just terrified of, dead air time. So I was kind of lousy at the beginning of that, slowly kind of relaxed into it, got better, began interviewing world-class experts, which was amazing because it kind of continues your education, as you know, from your podcast. And stopped that after a year, did about 200 shows, published part of the book, and opened up private practice. Well, I opened up private practice wanting to do positive psychology, but I found pretty quickly that people don't typically come in to get better at things. They come in to get out of pain. So points of pain, more powerful than points of pleasure. And so I switched it and got into anger management and kind of combined anger management with positive psychology. And it seemed to be a great combo. Because my belief is you can't just turn down the volume on anger without putting something else in its place, something like positive emotions. And did this online anger management class because my business model is terrible. I have to work an hour to get paid an hour. And so I started looking at ways to monetize my knowledge for the web. So I created an online anger management class, and they said find a niche. So I was like, okay, anger management for men. There's got to be millions of men out there that need help with this, that maybe aren't brave enough to come in person or don't have the funds to pay me. So I went live with it, and I immediately started getting emails from angry women all over the world of the nature of, hey, buddy, we're pissed off too. What about us? They told me to find a niche. It's not about you. And so I was a little bit, I felt bad, and I changed it to make it appropriate for both genders. But since then, and that was about 16 years ago, 10,000 people have gone through that, which it's a fact I'm very proud of, because I do feel like that's making the world a slightly better place. Because each one of those people that gets a handle on their anger makes a better world for everyone around them. And it also led to, and this is a whole nother story, but it led to working with one of the heads of the Mexican mafia, a guy that's killed 12 people, been in prison for 27 years, been addicted to meth and PCP. And so I got to work with him in prison to try and help him deal with his anger issue, which is not a big jump. So anyway, then let's see. In the midst of that, I went through a brutal, contentious divorce, which has to be that way, to fight over financially, but for some reason there were choices made by certain people that it went into litigation, and that was too bad. It was disappointing. It did a lot of relationships, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to manage my emotions, the rest. Yeah, I learned a great deal then, and then my professional life took off, which is, I think it really speaks to the value of having someone that believes in you and your work versus someone that is tearing you down and criticizing you, telling you you're worthless and that your work is meaningless. Because once I got rid of that relationship, things started blowing up. I mean, that's when, Pixar called me. I published the book. I created more online classes. We recently did a global online summit with 28 expert interviews to help people out during COVID, and just kind of gave that away. Been speaking at a number of online summits, started the podcast, and it's been amazing. I met my fiance about 5 years ago, and then that's been incredible. So I think that the superhero origin story, I think, to me, is the realization that life is going to kick you in the face at times. Life is going to take us down at the knees, and that's just part of the process. And to have the confidence that I will get through this, it may not be quickly, it might take some time, but I will get through this, and I will be better and stronger and more resilient than before. That's really powerful knowledge to have. And I think that's really part of the game of life, that, we're going to get hurt in life. And then when we get hurt, we're going to withdraw and shield ourselves. And one of the goals is to drop the armor as quickly as possible to open yourself up to connection again and do it all over.
Man, you have such a good story. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate you opening up about some of the struggles that you've faced that have led you to this point. Because, one of the things that's really important about the philosophy or the foundation of what we do here at Defining Dad Bod is that idea of, I'm going through this thing, but I'm going to be stronger on the other end of it. And I mean, you could say that about exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle change, but that's a trope of life. That's the hero's journey, right? Mm-hmm.
is to go through
Right.
the adventure and to hang out in the underworld for a while and experience pain, but then to come back in a way to, home and hearth that brings the bounty of that journey to the people you love. And so it sounds to me like you've been through that cycle a few times.
Well, and you're absolutely right. That hero's journey that you mentioned, I think, is a great way to look at it, because so many of the people that I see are victims in their story.
Mm.
Oh, poor me, life sucks. This is so terrible what happened to me. And granted, I get that we need to do that for a minute after, unfortunate circumstances. And the more quickly you can ask yourself or get to the point of, how am I the hero of my own story? What is it that I've learned from this wreckage, from this last scenario? How can I be better? How can I do better? Like, those are really important questions to ask yourself. It speaks to the heart of post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress.
Mm. Well said. Now, so you've come a long way, and you have a project right now in the podcast world called The Evolved Caveman, which I love, by the way. My audience is very familiar with evolutionary science and evolutionary psychology, or at least in the bits that I work it into my conversations, because at a biological level, that's what exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle change are all about, is all of the ways that we've been shaped over time to work well in certain environments and to not work well in other environments and get the best out of ourselves. So if you would, in a short order, because you have a lot of content in the world, what is the Evolved Caveman? What's the mission and purpose of the Evolved Caveman?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question. I mentioned that I was doing anger management, and I got tired after doing that for about 10 years because I was dealing with mostly angry men, but angry teenage boys and then angry adult men. And the angry adolescents would come in and be like, I'm going in once, I'm not listening to anything he has to say, and then I'm out of there. And I could flip them, but it takes a lot of energy and effort. And then they still are kind of reluctant to practice the tools. They're not real motivated because everything's everyone else's fault. And so I shifted more into adult male businessmen.
Mm.
And, I've worked with a lot of men that are worth a lot of money, although that's not exclusively what I do. But, some clients are worth, 50 million, 400 million, like big sums of money. And I realized quickly that they were successful at work, but their biggest point of pain was actually in their relationships at home or in relationships in general. And primarily the relationship with their wife. And so I started shifting more into relationship work to teach them skills to be better in relationship. Because I think, one of the things that I get into is this idea of the man box culture and how we're socialized as men, or socialized as boys, I should say. And, we learn these lessons about what it means to be masculine or what it means to be a man from a really young age. Research shows it starts at 4 or 5 years. And so we get these messages, and you'll like this because you've got 2 young sons. But it starts in kindergarten, and we start think of, 5 little boys sitting in a kindergarten classroom. And one of the boys is like, I like Sally. I think she's cute. I'm going to give her a flower. And one boy in that group is kind of the pre-alpha male. He's probably got an alpha dad who's taught him some of this stuff. And this little boy says, dude, don't be such a girl. Well, that's the beginning of it. That's the beginning of the message of whatever's feminine isn't masculine. Whatever's feminine is bad. And we start to internalize these messages. And the messages are things like, be self-reliant, be invincible, don't feel, don't ask for help. And there's a smorgasbord of rules that we learn. And there's some good in there. And, like men should be the provider. Okay, fair enough. That's a decent rule to a point. Men are self-reliant. Decent rule to a point. But, I can think of, I have a friend growing up, and his dad, when his teeth would rot, he would pull out his own teeth in the garage with pliers. Well, that's self-reliant, but it's not healthy. So I think of each of these rules or traits on a 1 to 10 scale, and where are you on that 1 to 10 scale? Because back to your point when we were talking earlier about your stuff, a lot of this is about moderation. A lot of this is about the ability to shift gears as well. So what happens is we get to middle school or high school, and if we show too much of certain emotions, we get ridiculed or humiliated for it. So if we show too much sadness or fear, someone will say something like, dude, stop being such a pussy. Don't be a little bitch. Don't be a girl. And forgive the language, but this is, what we get.
True
and
story.
So when you get that a few times, you learn really quickly, I don't like how it feels. We don't like to be embarrassed or humiliated. So you jump back in the man box. You're like, shit, I've never shown that again. And on the other side, if you show too much love, romanticism, excitement, flamboyance, God forbid, someone will say, dude, that's the man box. So you jump back into the man box. And what are we left with emotionally? We're left with stress or lust or anger. That's what we can publicly display without fear of humiliation. And so most of our emotions as men get funneled through the anger lens. That's the big one. Some degree of anger. And when you fast forward into a relationship as an adult, it screws up our relationships. And even that provider role that a lot of my male clients are really good at, it starts out good. It morphs and becomes cancerous and problematic over 10, 20, 30 years. So you start out with this goal of providing for your family. Great goal, great value. But then over time, I think most men get sucked up in climbing the hierarchy. We like getting our ego stroked. We feel valuable. We're respected. We're admired. And we go home. And then, at this time we got like teenagers, and the teenagers don't listen to us. The wife is annoyed with us. And we're like, okay, this is as much fun. And so we spend more and more time at work. And the very people that you set out to provide for are now angry and irritated and resentful of you because you're never around.
Well said.
And so, to me, all this, kind of enters into this man box culture of how we're socialized. And, one of the big ideas for the men listening out there is this is not our fault. We did not ask to be socialized this way. It just happens. Sometimes it's our dad. Sometimes it's definitely our peers and friends. It's definitely social media, movies, TV, can be coaches, football coaches, baseball coaches, whatever, basketball, dude, stop being pussy, get back in there. Broken leg is nothing. And I've actually heard stories like that with fractured bones or bad concussions. Like, dude, get back in there. We need you in there. Okay, coach. And so then we sacrificed our health. I mean, it's all sorts of, there's a lot of problems in it. I've been accused of, well, you want to wussify men. Like, no, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is teach my clients how to have the awareness and the ability to shift gears to fit the context that they're in, the situation that they're in. So in other words, if you're going to go out and play football, fine, be stereotypically male, be aggressive, don't complain about pain, be angry. That helps on defense in football. Like, you want to fit your own psychological profile to best meet the situation. However, after football or rugby or basketball, if you go home and you've got a 4-year-old daughter or a 5-year-old son and they fall down and skin their knee, you want the ability to be nurturing and calm and kind and compassionate, give them a hug, tell them it's okay to cry. And then if you go on date night with your wife, you want to be able to be sympathetic and communicative and empathetic and understanding and be a good listener and not have to fix all the problems that she offers, which is kind of what we do. So that's kind of where I've gotten to. I've gotten from, anger management to dealing with male executives to relationship skills to this more recent work with masculinity and man box.
I love that idea, the evolved caveman. If you don't mind, I'm going to make a fitness corollary, because in the health and fitness world, there are different fitness abilities that you can go after that don't exactly overlap, right? You can be fast, you can be strong, you can be bulky, you can be flexible, you can be powerful. And, there's about 8 fitness abilities actually that they don't overlap. You have to train each one of them.
But Alex, I want all of those.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you can expand your abilities there, but it takes very specific training to do so, right? And what I hear you saying, in part of my psychology background, I'm a huge proponent of Carl Jung and the psychoanalytic backstory and whatnot. What I hear you saying is that there are different elements of a man's personality that don't exactly fit the man box. I would call that the warrior archetype, or maybe the father archetype, right? But there are other elements to a man's character, to his personality, that if left undeveloped, what he's going to do is he's going to bring the wrong archetype to the wrong situation, right? So like the warrior that can play football really well and climb the status hierarchy with his buddies and have a good, masculine time. The warrior probably doesn't need to show up when the 4-year-old falls off the bike and skins his knee. And I'm guilty, by the way. Like, hey man, take a deep breath, stand up. I don't need you screaming in the middle of the neighborhood. So, I guess mom will baby you up and put a Band-Aid on it, like, since you need to do that. And you can feel yourself going, this isn't right, but this is all I've got. Like, this is the script, right. In being cognizant of that and understanding that, and then letting yourself develop the other aspects of your personality that can show up still in a manly way. There's nothing girly about being compassionate to a scraped-kneed 4-year-old. But I know, in myself, that's a completely what's the word? If I was strong and flexible but not powerful, that's the same thing. I can I look bulky but I can't jump on a box. I can in real life, but it seems to me to be the same thing. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, to put it in Jungian archetype perspective, I think that the man box is something like the mage, the warrior, and let's say a father archetype. But we need there's more of us to be explored and expressed and to be comfortable with. You can go even like masculine and feminine. I think that, if it was Freud, I think Freud believed we all have some masculine and some feminine to us. And I think that's a good thing. I think that gives us the ability to shift gears. I don't talk about it in those terms normally because I think some men will hear that and go, oh, I don't want to find my woman's side. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. But I've always liked Jung and archetypes. I'm not a big fan of psychoanalytic, but I think that you're absolutely on point. It's having the ability to, the best way I can put it in men's terms is the ability to shift gears to fit the situation. And it's funny, I was in a men's group recently and they were like, this one guy was kind of criticizing me saying, well, don't you want to bring 100% of yourself to each situation that you're in? I was like, well, yes, but don't you bring like more of some of yourself to a situation than others? Like you can't just bring all of yourself to every situation. That doesn't really work. I mean, if you're talking every emotion, every thought, every side of your personality, like I don't see that working. I mean, you have to emphasize certain traits, certain conversational styles, certain emotions to fit the situation best. Oh yeah, 100%. That's kind of a funny thing to try to wrap your head around too. I'm like, no, I don't want all of me in every situation. Like sometimes you need a few walls and you need this little part of you to do its thing, Yeah. I mean, I think he was saying be authentic, which I get. Sure. But to your point that you made earlier, I mean, I did the same thing. Like I'm embarrassed to think back, I don't know, it was 30 years ago, maybe a little bit less, where one of my sons fell and scraped his knee. He hurt himself somehow. And I remember there was a few times where, he'd be like walking on a 2 or 3 foot high wall and I'd be like, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. And then they fall and hurt themselves. And my emotional response to that was irritation. And I was like, I was mad that they didn't listen. And I think mad that they hurt themselves. And the reason I was mad, I think, is because I'm so empathetic, and most men that I've talked to actually are. They all feel things deeply, 95% of them, which was surprising. But I think I feel things so deeply that I pick up their pain, and I don't want them to be in pain. And my first response to that was anger. And I really had to look at that and say, what the hell am I doing? Like, where did that come from? This is not a good constructive response to this situation. I need to fix this. Yeah, well said. And I appreciate that. Part of my story is I had a couple traumatic incidences around age 4 and 5 where my father was very loud and abusive to my mother. And it was a whole saga and stuff. But even to this day, screaming, even in the form of like a little baby or a kid who's hurt themselves and they're crying, it like, there's like some visceral part of me that like the world's ending. It's like nails on a chalkboard and I want to shut up the screaming. I want to make it stop, because it hurts me inside to be a part of that. Right. And so what's interesting is it took me a couple of years of having young kids before I was like, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. It's not just that I don't enjoy crying babies and that's a frustrating noise. It's like, I want to make it stop. It makes me angry and tense and frustrated and hurt and all those things. And I have to find a part of myself that isn't that, intense about it, if that makes sense. So I appreciate the work that you're doing with men. You're not alone in that. I mean, I would say the vast majority of men are the same. I love kids. I hate it when they scream or are in pain or cry. And there's that evolutionary reason for it, right? I mean, if we didn't care, if we weren't moved by their pain, by their suffering, we could just be like, whatever. And they would just go hungry and starve or hurt themselves and never get help. And so I think there's layers to it for you and for us. And it's amazing to me because I don't think most men understand how empathetic they are. Empathy being, you pick up what the other person is feeling. And to give you an example, I'll tell a lot of my men, like, look, when your wife is venting to you about something like work, let's say, you come home from work, you're tired and she's tired. She starts going in about, all the shitty stuff that happened at work today. Normally what we men do is we want to fix it. Why do we want to fix it? We want to fix it, I believe, because when my wife's in pain or my partner's in pain, I pick up that pain and it makes me incredibly uncomfortable internally. I don't know what to do with that discomfort, that dis-ease. And so I immediately want to fix it because partly I want to stop that feeling myself. So one of the things I'll tell them is, look, when your wife starts doing that, just ask her a question, interrupt her, say, hey, honey, I appreciate that you had a tough day at work. Can I just ask you a quick question? How can I best serve you? Do you want me to just listen? Do you want me to try and fix it? Or do you need a hug? Because if you have the answer to that question, man, you're golden. Because most of the time, women, I would argue, do not want us to fix the problem. They just want to be heard and validated, which means you go, wow, honey, that sounds like that was really tough. Or sounds like you're really frustrated at work. Or, I can see where that really annoyed you when your boss treated you like garbage or whatever it is. But the problem then becomes, so let's say they say, well, I just want you to listen, honey. Okay, cool. And then we sit there and we go back to listening and they start venting again. We don't know how to deal with that discomfort in our body. And so we again fall back into the need to fix. And that's just empathy.
Well said. Very well said. And I appreciate you.
And the first step to fixing that is awareness.
Well, and the empathy, if I misspeak, let me know because you know more about this than I do. But the empathy is built into us. It's neither, I wouldn't even say it's that masculine or feminine. It's just that's part of being a human being is the mirror neurons that let you understand somebody's feelings and then map that onto yourself. And so like that's kind of innate. And the question is, what do you do about that?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that I'll tell a lot of men when I first start working with them, and I can tell pretty quickly that they feel things deeply as well, is look, you are sensitive. You do feel things deeply, and that's a good thing because I can teach you how to turn down the volume on that. And the people that I really, really worry about, the longer I've been in psychology, is the people that have very little to no empathy. Because if I have no empathy and I can't feel your pain and suffering, Alex, then I can treat you like an ant. You become less than a person to me. You're an object and I can do whatever I want because I'm not dissuaded by your suffering, by your pain, by your hurt. So it doesn't matter to me. So, and those are the people that are, psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists.
I was going to say that's the hallmark of psychopathy, right? Is the almost the inability to map somebody else's onto yourself, and therefore it doesn't hurt you to hurt me because you can do whatever you want.
And so just to put a finer distinction about empathy there's a difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. So many of these, like a psychopath can have cognitive empathy, which means like if I have cognitive empathy, I can put myself intellectually into your shoes and know what you're thinking, maybe know what you're feeling. If I have emotional empathy, I feel what you're feeling. And this happens a lot with the men that I work with, but we have very little awareness of it because we've been socialized to disconnect ourselves from emotion because we think that to be a man means to not feel. Right. And yet almost every man I've dealt with feels deeply.
Well, and it's different too.
And there's actually research that shows that as babies, that our emotions are stronger than female babies. That our physiological arousal is higher, but then by the time we get to 4 or 5, we're learning to shut it down.
So, and there's a piece of this too. I work with men on the regular basis, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this conundrum in a moment. But when guys are trying to open up about how they feel about something, and let's be honest, if you haven't done that often, you suck at it. It's very difficult to articulate how you're feeling at all. You ask your wife what's wrong, and she's like, "Oh, nothing." She's not trying to put you off the path. It's just very difficult to articulate emotions, right? So you're trying to articulate something that you're bad at articulating with a woman and you feel inadequate at doing so and a little girly about the whole thing. That's different from being able to talk to somebody like you, like you're a man, you've successfully reproduced 4 times as I understand it. So you're about as manly as man gets, right?
And so successful, I don't know, but yes.
They're still alive.
Reproduced 4 times.
That's great. So being able to converse with another man about what the feelings are like and get some practice articulating can be extremely important. And I found this in my practice pretty often when I talk to guys. I don't deal so much in the realm of psychology, maybe behavioral psychology and habit change and whatnot. But, things that will stand in the way of nutrition changes. Like I just had a conversation with a guy. He knows he needs to cut down his alcohol intake. He knows he does. However, his wife, there's a Freudian slip for you.
That was Freudian.
Yeah. His wife opens a bottle of wine every night and they enjoy drinking wine together. The problem is he doesn't have any, moderation once he's passed a glass of wine, and before he knows it, he's completed the bottle, right? So he's like, okay, I need to cut down on my alcohol consumption. Like, he said that's his goal. I didn't throw that on him, right? But at the same time, he's like, I don't know how to do that without pissing my wife off. And what's interesting is I'm like, well, let's have that conversation, because it doesn't need to be, oh, I'm doing this new health and fitness kick. Your wine's bad for me. I need to stop drinking wine with you. It's like, all right, honey, I've come across some new information about how alcohol is affecting my testosterone. I know you want me to be a libidinous, energetic, happy, muscular dude. And so I need your help limiting my wine intake. So let's talk through that conversation, like a glass of wine a night. Can you help me stick to that? Is it okay if I go a couple nights a week without? Like, let's work this out together. Because I taught guys through those conversations like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. It's like, no, it's not so bad, but you needed to have this practice, in order to walk into this without, mucking it up. What's been your experience in getting our social support system, especially our wives, on board with our health and fitness habits?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great setup. And I think, to me, I like the idea of a soft startup that comes from John Gottman. And the idea is basically, hey, honey, I got something important I want to talk to you about. Is now a good time? And the answer can be yes or no. If it's no, okay, when is a good time? If it's yes, then you've given her a heads up that, hey, I need your full attention right now. I have something that's heavy that I want to discuss with you that's important to me. And then you can go into, hey, as you know, I'm trying to make some health changes here. And I've learned that, drinking a bottle of wine a night is not a good habit for me. And, maybe by extension for you as well. I can't really speak to that, but I need to change that habit for myself. And I think you'll like the effects of me changing that, because I'll be more, I'll be a sexual tiger in bed again, or, whatever. I'll lose my gut. You use the word libidinous, and I'm like, you have really smart listeners.
But my listeners are very intelligent.
But I think that, to do a soft startup and then to go into it with, and I really like the idea of going into these conversations with curiosity and compassion. And, I think that one of the things that I've been talking to my clients a lot about lately is the idea of the mischief of defensiveness. And, so many of these situations spark defensiveness in us, especially us men, that any sort of criticism, real or perceived, we kind of start to get defensive, and defensiveness just shuts any chance of open conversation, compromise, evolution. It shuts it down. And so I think just to be aware of tuning your attention into your body and asking yourself, am I starting to get defensive now? Now, granted, in this situation, it's a little bit more for the wife than the husband, but, what is it that tips you off that you're getting defensive? It could be something like a discomfort in the stomach. It could be a tightness in the chest. It could be a tightness in or constriction of the throat. It's definitely some cognitive elements like, but, you start to hear the buts in your mind of, but I like my wine, or, but half a bottle a night's not that much, or, but, resveratrol is good for us, whatever we come up with these rationalizations, and it just kills the conversation. So to begin to tune into the body and begin to be aware of that defensive response is huge for these sorts of conversations.
Well, and it's been my experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. It's been my experience in my marriage that when I can be authentic about how I'm feeling about something, when I can articulate that and my wife's open to hearing it, which requires some reciprocity on my part, by the way, like she has to feel willing and able to do the same to me, that kind of aligns with my core value of integrity. Because I used to approach conversations as if I want this outcome, so I'm not sure how I need to frame the conversation to get there. And that's very different from articulating what I feel about this thing right now in a humble way, because what I feel might not be the right way to feel about it. It might not be the best way to feel about it, but this is where I'm at. Yeah. And this is the swarm or cloud of things that are surrounding it. Being able to articulate that to somebody who's supposed to be, close and connected to me, that really helps with the integrity thing, because I'm not walking into a conversation trying to manipulate the relationship for my outcomes. Instead, I get to show up authentically She gets to show up authentically, and whatever is produced from that might even be better than what I imagined to begin with, because two heads, two hearts, better than one, right? So I find it really freeing to approach things that way. What's been your experience coaching men through that, and maybe personally?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. To me, one of the big values, one of the most important values is integrity. And integrity being that, you do what you say what you do, that you're acting in accordance with your top 3, 4, 5 values. And integrity to me was the most important thing that I was looking for in a real relationship after my marriage. Definitely. I think that, what you were talking about to me, it's skill at communication, it's skill at emotional literacy. Because one of the things that really pissed me off a while back was research finding, and I'd have to go look for it, but they did some research where they looked at how many emotions can a man name versus how many emotions can a woman name. Just how many can you name? And for men on average, it was 8. For women on average, it was 17. I can be a little competitive, so I was like,
yeah,
I want more emotions. This was like 25 years ago.
My team's
but
losing.
This was also, they got 17, I got 8. Son of a bitch. So, this was also when I got out of a PhD program at Cal in psychology and realized I was still an emotional idiot. And that's why I wrote a book like 15 years ago, just partly so I could just my emotional literacy, which I think is a foundational skill for a happy and thriving life. Because, that's one of the things that really drives me crazy. This is a little bit of a tangent, but one of the things that drives me crazy that I want to save men from is this man box culture that results in us being emotionally stunted and emotionally unaware means that it necessarily undermines our shot at happiness, because happiness is by definition an emotional experience. And that bugs the shit out of me, because I see it over and over and over again, these men that have just pursued success to the exclusion of things like relaxation, contentment, happiness, meaning, and they're worth a ton of money and they're miserable. And it doesn't have to be that way.
And I see that in the...
But there's something else I wanted to bring up. Again, this is a little tangential.
Yeah, that's okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I see that in the health and fitness world as well. You have, guys who are in better shape than you could ever be, with some great genetics and great workout program. And maybe they don't even have any kids. And so like they have all the time in the world to do this thing. But I've gotten to hang out with those people and they're not that happy either. Right. So getting the 6-pack abs and the split biceps and, being able to deadlift 600 pounds, if it's not a part of a bigger picture, then it will definitely not be the route to happiness. The physical wealth and the financial wealth, like neither of them can make up for the lack of emotional growth that's required to experience those things richly.
Yeah, we know that, a foundational pillar of a happy life is relationships. As annoying as that was to me 10 years ago, because, I can be a little introverted and like, people, I don't need them. A little curmudgeonly. But I had to learn how to be better at small talk. I was like, what? Small talk? Like, that's so annoying. But it also serves an important purpose, which is, some people are only comfortable doing small talk. Some people, I believe that small talk is kind of the beginning of the emotional glue that holds relationships or builds friendships. But what I wanted to go to is one of the patterns that I just wanted to bring to the awareness of listeners that's been coming up a lot in the couples therapy that me and my fiance have been doing is this. There was a couple we talked to yesterday where they've been together for about, 9 months. And the girlfriend would pursue the male, her boyfriend, with just curious questions. How was work today? When are you coming to bed? And, I'm sure they got more pressing or more, pointed at some point. But what we found is that he would interpret her questioning as annoying and would withdraw a little bit further. So she's trying to connect with him. He sees that as annoying and would go away further, would run further away, figuratively speaking. And then that increased her anxiety, increased her insecurity, and he would run further away. This pattern is problematic. And at some point, I think the questions get interpreted as criticisms. Like you leave a beer out in the trash and she's like, oh, did you have a beer? And he's like, she's criticizing my drinking. She thinks I had 6 beers, something like that, right? I just wrote an article kind of trying to really dissect at a fine level what's going on there. Because I think that this is universal or almost universal for men. That, we're not as skilled in conversation. We're not literate. and we get to a relationship, desperately long for the connection, and we get the connection, and the connection gets too deep and too intense, and it scares the shit out of us. And so we withdraw. And, I think some of the thoughts that go through our mind, even at some level, is, wow, I'm not competent in this area of relationship or communication. She knows more than I do. She's better skilled at this. In fact, she probably knows me better than I know myself. This is embarrassing to me. I don't like feeling incompetent. I got to get the hell out of here.
And none of those are constructive feelings, by the way.
Yeah.
So this is such a valuable conversation, and I really appreciate you bringing it to my audience, because, we speak a lot about the physical body here at Defining Dad Bod, and about as deep as we get into emotions is talking about facing them in a way other than eating, because emotional eating's quite the issue, as you can imagine, when people are pursuing better health and fitness. I wanted to give you, as I'm looking at the time here, I wanted to give you an opportunity to leave our listeners with really the last thoughts or last words that you wanted to speak to them in the realm of the evolved caveman, improving relationships, living a more fulfilling life. And then I wanted you to have the opportunity to tell people about how they can get connected with your work if they want to pursue these things further for themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that the evolved caveman to me is about how do we evolve past that man box? How do we evolve past that caveman part of our brain, which is, mirror, fight, flight, freeze, staying addicted to stress, and, the addiction to urgency, and the addiction to doing, and the addiction to proving ourselves, which we can only do for so long, depending on how old we get. But to really be curious about this concept of masculinity, and to seek to separate yourself from how you were socialized as a boy, to gain a little bit of distance between yourself and the very air that you breathe, which is this idea of masculinity and how we're socialized, which is all around us, and I believe permeates everything that we say, do, think, and feel. Just to look at what parts of it do I want to keep, what parts of it do I want to leave behind, and what parts of it do I maybe want to modify slightly so that I guess myself and my relationships are better served. Because I really believe at this point in my life that it's all about relationships and connection, that's really a large part of happiness. Just to illustrate the point, we don't normally laugh by ourselves. In terms of getting a hold of me, there's a couple websites. It's guide2self.com. There's theevolvedcaveman.com. The podcast is The Evolved Caveman. You can reach out to me on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. It's on all those social media things.
Perfect. Well, Dr. John, I sincerely appreciate this conversation. I know just even having this conversation with you makes me feel more intentional toward my kids and my wife. So I hope that any listeners listening in onto this conversation, hopefully you had the same experience, and that if you want to keep delving into this stuff, I've really enjoyed Dr. John's work, just getting connected to him online and stuff. So thank you for what you're doing, and keep up the work, brother.
Well, Alex, I enjoyed the hell out of this conversation. Thank you so much for having me. And
to my listeners, you guys know what's coming. This has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The free, practical advice and conversations here remain unbought and unbiased, thanks to the support of listeners just like you. If this episode's been helpful to you, please share it with somebody in your life who you know it will benefit. Then, subscribe to the podcast and leave us a raving review to tell others what value Defining Dad Bod has brought to your health and fitness journey. And finally, if you want more Defining Dad Bod, consider joining our online community. We send a lot of free perks and resources your way, and I, Coach Alex, go live every month to talk through our listeners' health and fitness questions to make the practical science of this show applicable to everyday life. Everyone's welcome, and we'd love to have you. For more information about joining the Inner Circle or becoming a supporter of the Defining Dad Bod podcast, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle.